wait a few minutes as we let everybody in from the waiting room. We've got several dozen people there already, and they'll continue to come in. Sorry, it's 5:03 here in Kitchener. I know we've got people from across the country, so I always say good morning, good afternoon, good evening. And certainly for Andrew in Australia, it's good morning for him tomorrow morning. The Australians are always a little ahead of us Canadians, I find. So we'll wait a few minutes before we get started formally. I always talk a bit of gibberish while I'm waiting for people to come in, and thank you for your patience. We'll probably get started formally in a couple of minutes, 2 or 3 minutes. And I just got in from shoveling 15 centimeters of snow here in Kitchener, Ontario. We got our first shovelable snow, which is not my favorite thing, I have to say. But, and we've got temperatures, Andrew, from all across the country, from East Coast to West Coast. It varies pretty widely. We had some people on last week from Calgary. They were -10 in Calgary. And so they were complaining vigorously, and I don't blame them.
We've got exactly the opposite here in Australia. It's in South Australia, Adelaide, where I am, it's 24 degrees at the moment, and at the end of this week, it's going to be 38 degrees on Friday and 40 on Saturday. So,
and if you've ever read that book, Andrew, How to Win Friends and Influence People, that's not the way to do it when you're talking to a bunch of Canadians, right? Although, you know what, I don't like 38 and 40 either, so I'm okay with that.
we have a wide range of temperatures in this country, as you do.
Yeah, and mostly temperate, I would say, right? I mean, it depends on where you are. I mean, that's like saying in Canada we're mostly temperate, isn't it? I mean, we've got so many things. We've got coastal weather and we've got internal weather. So it's and certainly in any given day, the people on these calls have about 10 different bits of weather that based on where they are in Canada. Yeah. So hello, everybody, as you're coming into the call. Thank you very much for joining us. We'll start in 1 or 2 minutes, just as we let everybody on. I can walk you through, most of you will be familiar with Zoom, but if you move your cursor, you're going to see your controls coming along the bottom of your screen. And if you click on the chat button there at the bottom, a chat will open up on the right-hand side. If you've got any questions for any of us, you simply have to click that button and type into the chat. I'll keep an eye on that and ask questions of Andrew as we go. And we've got Anaïs Philippe from our head office. Hi, Anaïs. She's running the show for us. Thank you for doing that, Anaïs. We sure appreciate it.
You're welcome.
And I'm here with 3 screens in front of me. That's why I've got such bright light. There's nothing I can do about that. I'm sorry about that. But and how are we doing as far as people coming in, Anaïs?
I think it's okay. We have everyone. No more.
Oh, great.
In the waiting room. Yeah.
That's excellent. Okay. Well, without further ado, I'd like to welcome Andrew Cudmore from Berton Vineyards. He is correct me if I'm wrong, Andrew, you are the export manager for Burton,
yes.
Right? And so Andrew was kind enough to join us today. It's actually Monday morning for him, and yet he and I have been sharing a glass of wine previous to this already, as I think is called for. That's mine is the High Eden, the Burton High Eden Bonsai 2015. And I was just asking Andrew before the call if they're still numbering these bottles, because I am bottle number 3183 of 4,000 bottles I'm drinking tonight. And I was able to capture one of these bottles when Andrew visited us a few years ago. He actually did a tour of Canada, and he did an event here in Kitchener with me when I was an area rep. And so I was fortunate enough to meet Andrew. So I won't go on and on too much, but Burton's been a valuable partner of Opinion for some time. And again, we really appreciate your taking the time, Andrew, to come on board with us and tell us a little bit about the wines. They change a little each year, and that's for a myriad of reasons, because sometimes they just don't have a good year, and sometimes they've got a new brand that they'd like to share with us. One of the things you'll notice this year is that we have 4 of the wines are web exclusives. So they're not in the printed catalog, and that's new to Opinion. We wanted to offer Opinion members more selection, and the expense of going with a bigger catalog is very expensive. We're right at the top end for weight with Canada Post. If we add another 4 pages, it gets very expensive to ship. So we thought better of it and put some web exclusive wines for you to look at. So you can always go on your dashboard on your Opinion profile. And when you go searching, we've got the web exclusive wines specific there. So without further ado, Mr. Cudmore, I'm happy to introduce you to our Opinion members. There's several dozen of them here, just waiting to hear what you have to say about your Burton wines.
Well, thank you very much, Michael. Firstly, thank you very much for taking the time to come and learn a little bit more about Berton Vineyards. I should just give you a brief background about our company for those that aren't particularly familiar with Burton. Our company was founded in 1996 by Bob Burton and his wife Shiraz, who decided they had 2 young children. They pulled them out of school, and they went and started up a vineyard at Eden Valley, which is, or Eden Hills, I should say, which is a short valley and a hillside that runs alongside the Barossa. It's around 450 meters in height, and where a lot of Australia's premium wine comes from. So they planted a small vineyard there in 1996 with Shiraz, Cabernet, Chardonnay, and Sauvignon Blanc. They then started to grow those wines on the vineyard, making only a few cases, with the first vintage being in 2004. After that, Bob was working in another winery. He left that winery. He was the CEO of that company, decided to leave that company, and took 4 of his colleagues, the finance fellow, the national sales manager, and the chief winemaker, James Siccato. And the 4 of them started up their own business in 2005, and they wanted to purchase a boutique winery, but they ended up purchasing quite a large winery in a place called Yenda in New South Wales, which is around 6.5 hours drive west of Sydney and 5.5 hours drive north of Melbourne. It's in the southern part of New South Wales. It's in a wine growing region called the Riverina, and they got hold of the winery in November 2005, and 2 months later started their first vintage. It's a big winery with a capacity to crush 20,000 tonnes. That business has developed since then. We now have around 60 people that work in our business. There are 10 shareholders, of which I am one of the shareholders. And we've just grown organically, I suppose, without a hell of a lot of strategic planning. But the basic idea that we've wanted to achieve is to just make good quality wines at an affordable price. So that's been the mantra of the company, and we make wines from what we call relatively premium wines, which are mainly grown in this high Eden vineyard that I mentioned, all the way through to more affordable, commercially priced wines, such as the Baron Jack wines that we have in the catalogue, and have developed this range specifically for Opinion. So that's, we're now selling our wine in around 28 different countries around the world. We sell half in the Australian domestic market and half in export. We produce a bit over 1 million cases, but we also produce quite a wide range of wines from different regions in Australia, not just New South Wales, not just Eden Valley, but also wines from the Riverina or Big Rivers area, which is where Baron Jack wines come from. And we've been reasonably successful. I think we've been very successful, actually, and we've put our wines in international competitions to try to get endorsements so that independent people such as Jane at Opimium and others can judge our wines for themselves. So that's just a brief bit of background. We've been working with Opimium, I think, Michael, for around 7 years, I suppose, I think.
True that, yes.
7 to 6 years.
Right.
And trying to, obviously, with each offering, we want to come up with a different vintage, and sometimes they're the same label, like our bonsai. Michael said he's drinking the 2015 right now. The one we have in the offering that's coming up is 2018, and I'm happy to talk about that in a minute. But just initially, I thought it might be a good idea to discuss and talk about with you the I suppose more commercially priced wines, which are the Baron Jack wines that we have here, which is this label here. I've just opened this one. This is the Sauvignon Blanc that I'm going to try. Firstly, the name Baron Jack. Why have we called it Baron Jack? The reason for that is that in the Riverina area, it's an irrigated, warm climate area. And there's a huge dam called Baron Jack on the border of Queensland and New South Wales that provides irrigation water for our region. And so that is why we've called this brand Baron Jack. And we've also just recently planted a new vineyard that will support this product as it develops. It's around 100 acres. It's in the Riverina area of New South Wales. And the varieties that we have here in the Baron Jack range that are in the cellar offering, which are 2 whites, a Sauvignon Blanc, a Pinot Grigio, a Shiraz Cabernet, and a Shiraz, are all going to be coming from that vineyard. And we've named the vineyard Baron Jack as well. So that's the story behind the name of the brand. At this stage, we're offering this wine exclusively through Opimium. In fact, they're the first company really to be selling Baron Jack. It's something we started with last year. This is the second offering we've had, although we've got different products this time. We had Chardonnay last time. We've got a Pinot Grigio and a Sauvignon Blanc this time.
And if I could interject quickly, Andrew,
Yes.
it's unusual for us at this price point with the everyday drinking to have these in 6s rather than 12. So I think it encourages members to buy more than just one varietal, right? So they don't have to stick to one because they're going to get 12 of them. There's actually in cases of 6. Okay. And so it makes it that much more accessible for them as well.
Okay. Now this product here that we've got, this, if I could start with the Sauvignon Blanc, it's got aromas of passion fruit, lemon zest. The winemakers have even described it some fresh parsley in the nose. Its palate begins with citrus and honeydew, and it quickly transcends into quite tropical flavors. So it's a very clean, typically Sauvignon Blanc, Australian Sauvignon Blanc style, just an easy drinking style, drink now style, or more of a, I suppose in the price point, if it depends what your drinking habits are, but it's an everyday Monday to Thursday wine, if you like. Great for drinking while you're preparing the meal. And again, I think in looking at the catalogue, it's probably one of the most affordable prices on the catalogue, but it still has heaps of flavour, quite excellent length in the palate, and it's got a sort of a fresh green apple flavour on the palate as well. So that's the Baron Jack Sauvignon Blanc, 2020 vintage, only literally just released, and been bottled only a week ago. So it's a wine that I think you'll enjoy. The next wine in the Baron Jack range, again, that's in the catalogue, is and I'll just get one of these. Is a Pinot Grigio, and that's this wine here. It's a 100% Pinot Grigio. I hope that showed up all right on this Zoom screen.
Very well.
But this wine is a little different. It's got a rather tingly acidity. It displays aromas of green apples and citrus, and the palate presents some sort of lime, lemon, and even pear flavors. So again, it's a different. It's not quite as austere as most Italian Pinot Grigios. This is a little bit more upfront with the fruit flavor, but still a very easy drinking, not too full flavored as Pinot Grigio is sometimes, but still enough length in the flavor to give it a zesty finish. So I think this is a wine that you'll enjoy as well. And again, all of these Baron Jack wines are priced at the same level. Very approachable, affordable wines.
And I've always said that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the Pinot Grigio is more of a softer edge, where the Sauvignon Blanc has that harder edge. And so it's a little more approachable, a little more of a sipper. Would you say so?
I would say that this wine is definitely, but at the same time, it's got a little bit of zesty lime, pear flavors. So it's got some great flavors in the wine as well,
right. Yeah.
Which is quite interesting, and it's typical of an Australian Pinot Grigio. It's not a dull. Sort of some Pinot Grigios are very, very light in flavor and quite subtle. This is a little bit more robust, a little bit more interesting, and still very easy drinking. Lots of reasonable length in the palate as well.
Great.
So moving along, and I suppose I should still continue to talk about Baron Jack. These are 4 products that are all in the offering. The first one of the reds, which I've got in my hand here, is the Baron Jack Shiraz. Now, this wine's it's an interesting wine. It's one that I think Jane has put in her. Where if I look in the catalogue here, she has made this one of her wines. Jane's. Goodness, my French isn't too good, Mike. Can you help me out with it?
Sure. Are you saying that it's one of her coup de coeur?
That's right. That's exactly right. So she's highlighted 4.
That's actually the reserve as opposed to the Baron Jack, right?
I'm sorry, that's the reserve.
Yes.
I am sorry.
Yes.
I'm sorry. I'm getting
no problem. But yes, the coup de coeur, it's of her heart.
Yeah. Okay. So that's not the Baron Jack. Well, I'll talk about that one in a minute. But the Baron Jack. This Baron Jack Shiraz is it's a medium-bodied wine. It's got rather bright colour, the aromas of plum and spicy oak. It's again, the palate is quite full flavored with blackberries and some mocha notes. And this wine, the previous vintage of this wine won the 2019 vintage, won a gold medal at the Hong Kong Wine and Spirit Awards, which is the major show that they have in Asia, based in Hong Kong. And we were pretty pleased that a wine at this affordable sort of price point could win such a high award. This particular wine, again, is a 2020 vintage. It's about to be bottled. The wine that I've got in my hand here is a tank sample. The wine's about to be bottled, I think, in a week or two, and it's a wine that's made to drink now, although it will improve in age for around about 3 to 4 to 5 years. But it's a full-flavored, easy drinking, smooth style, and again at a very affordable price. And the sort of food matching with this would be ragu pasta dishes, cheese flavored risotto, things like that. It's easy to drink on its own, but also goes quite well with a number of different sort of mild flavored food dishes as well.
Right. And Andrew, we did notice that in the catalog for this Shiraz, for the Baron Jack specifically, Jane has mentioned that it's a light-bodied, flavorsome red, which I would say it's light-bodied for a Shiraz, right? You had said that it's more medium-bodied, and I think from that perspective, it's and Gary's asking if it is the 2020, is it lighter than the 2019?
No, I don't think it is. The 20 still, it's not lighter than the 19. It's very similar, just a little bit fresher, obviously, but it's got quite reasonable length on the palate. So it's a easy drinking, approachable style.
Yeah, and our food writer has paired it with some barbecued lamb kebabs with a cherry basting sauce so that fruit forwardness. I think that's not going to overpower this Shiraz, is it? I mean, the Shiraz is going to stand up quite nicely to that.
Yeah, I think that sounds like that'd be a pretty good offering to have with it.
Right.
As far as the next wine, which is I'll just pour some of that, is a Shiraz Cabernet. So this wine is 60% Shiraz, and I think it's exactly 62% Shiraz and 38% Cabernet. It's about 14% in alcohol, like many Australian reds are. Again, the Cabernet just gives it makes it a little bit tighter. It's still a medium-bodied style. It's got quite a bright color. So it's got berries, slightly sweeter oak. We put oak staves with this. It's not barrel fermented, but we use oak staves to make this. And it displays sort of forest, smooth tannins, and a little bit of touch of oak on the palate. So this is I suppose, a classic Australian blend of Shiraz and Cabernet. Again, very approachable, easy drinking style. And it goes well with pizza, with pasta dishes.
Now, it's very interesting. In the catalog, we've got braised duck tacos with pico de gallo, which I've never had those, but it sounds quite lovely. I think that could work really well.
What is pico de gallo, by the way?
So it's a sauce of a sort over top, very similar.
Okay.
Salsa. It's a type of salsa that it's got some heat to it for sure.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay, well, just moving on. I think it's probably time to now start talking about that Padthaway Shiraz that I was mentioning earlier. This wine here is the wine that we were talking about a minute or two ago. This is a wine that we call our Winemakers Reserve Shiraz from Padthaway. It's a range, again, that is exclusive to Opimium in Canada. Can't buy this anywhere else in Canada apart from Opimium. It's an interesting wine. It's won a gold medal. The 1919 version of this has. This is this wine that we're selling here or offering here is 1919. So I'm sorry, this wine has won again a gold medal at the China Wine and Spirit Awards, which was terrific. We're very, very pleased about that. It's a more robust, full-flavored wine. It's got a little bit of mint and eucalyptus on the nose, which is very typical from Padthaway. Padthaway is an area in Australia that is right next to the Coonawarra. Some of you would have heard about the Coonawarra. The Coonawarra is famous in Australia for Cabernet Sauvignon. And one of the characteristics you get from this region is mint and eucalyptus. A little bit of spicy mint on the nose and a bit of eucalyptus on the notes of the wine.
And just so you know, Andrew, we've got people on the call that are drinking the 15 and the 16, and the descriptions are marvelous and fantastic. So.
Oh, that's great. That's great. I mean, it's fairly full-flavored, quite a bit more intense in flavour than the Baron Jack. It's got sort of black plums and blackberries, and as I mentioned, a little bit of spice on the nose as well. But the tannins are ripe. It's got great structure, this wine. We think it's pretty well balanced, and it's got a reasonable length on the palate as well. So
it has been one of our best sellers in the past as well.
Yeah, it has, most definitely. It's a wine that can be drunk on its own. It's also great with different food pairings, of course, but it's not over the top as some big Barossa-based, perhaps McLaren Vale styles of Shiraz are from Australia. This is a little bit more approachable, easier drinking style, but still heaps of flavour, quite a bit of complexity, great depth in the colour, and just an interesting wine. And also we have it packaged in a, where is the damn bottle? Here it is. I've got all these different bottles here in front of me. It's packaged in a super premium bottle with a deep punt, so it's great to serve at dinner parties or when your guests come around. It's pretty interesting packaging, and but most importantly, what's inside the bottle is the key thing, and it seems to be very much a favourite with the Opimium members in previous years. So this is the latest vintage, 2019, that, as I mentioned earlier, James highlighted in the catalogue. Now, what else? I should talk also about a rather interesting varietal, which is again, it's a Winemakers Reserve, but this time it's a varietal called Giriff. Now, some of you may have heard about this, others might not have. It's a different varietal. This varietal was made by a 1970 at the University of Montpellier, where he did an experiment and he combined a Petit Syrah, which is a clone of Shiraz, with another red varietal called Pelusseron, which is rather unusual, but he combined those two varieties together and he came up with this varietal that in America, they call it Petit Syrah. And so he combined a Shiraz varietal with this other grape called a Pelusseron. And we call it Giriff after the guy that invented the varietal. So in Australia, a Giriff often has been used as a blending wine. It's a very, very full-bodied style. It's, I suppose, Cabernet, although it can be reasonably a tighter varietal. The next step up is Australian Shiraz, which is very full-flavoured. And then this is a step up again, which is intense, dark, rich colour in the glass, very dark colour. And it's quite spicy, minty notes on the end. So often this varietal Giriff in Australia has been used as a blending wine to add weight to blends of Shiraz and Cabernet. But we've decided to make a straight varietal of this, and we've tried to soften it out a little bit to make it a little bit more approachable, a bit more easy drinking style. It's certainly a very interesting type of wine. I'll just get the winemaker's notes and just read.
And I remember you serving this actually at the event we had here in Kitchener and liking it very much.
Yeah, when people try it, they're quite surprised. So it's quite different, but it's not a wine that. It's a wine you can easily have 2 or 3 glasses of. It's not a wine that you just can drink 1 glass and it's too full-bodied. It's quite approachable, much easier drinking style than a lot of other similar Giriffs on the market, or Petit Syrah, I should say. And some of you, I suppose, will be familiar with Petit Syrah, which is the name that's given to this varietal in pretty much in the United States. They grow quite a bit of this. It was the reason they started growing this in the States was back in Prohibition in the early part of the 20th century, when people were making their own batches of wine. This wine was so robust that it could be made in small batches in the backyard or in a warehouse by these prohibitionists, and it was, because of its robustness, it was able to continue and hold up and not go off, I suppose. So that's one of the reasons that varietal was chosen, Petit Syrah, which is what it's called in the States. But this version we have, as I mentioned earlier, is a much smoother, easier drinking style. So just an interesting one to consider. And is that in the catalogue or the web? This one, I should. This one.
Yeah, it's web exclusive.
It's web exclusive.
And actually, Anais has provided the connection to it, the link in the chat, if anybody's looking for it. And I actually just looked up the sales to date, and it's interesting. It's selling much better in Ontario, and I think that's because you had done those 3 or 4 events here in Ontario. And people have had a chance to try this, and people are buying it again. So that's marvelous.
I think it's a wine, because people haven't heard of it or not very familiar, might be a bit resident to experiment with. But once you do try it, it's very interesting, and it's likely that you'll come back and try it again, I think. So for those that are a bit adventurous, perhaps consider this one as well. And again, I think it's quite reasonably priced. It's the same price as the biggest selling wine, which is this Winemaker's Shiraz that we have in the catalogue as well.
Mm-hmm.
This is by far the most favourite product in our range that sells with Opimium. But this wine here, the Giriff, is the same price.
And again, in sixes, it makes it more approachable for sure.
Yeah. And as is, I perhaps should have talked about this a bit earlier, but we've also, where are we? This is in the Vermentino.
So in its web exclusive as well, lot 2174.
Yep. So this is web exclusive. Now, Vermentino, originally an Italian grape variety. One of the reasons we have a Vermentino is that Bob Burton's parents were born in Italy. So he has, although he's a full-blown Aussie, his parents originated and family originated in northern Veneto, in the northern part of Italy, and Vermentino is a variety that's quite popular there. So we grow a reasonable amount of Vermentino in Australia. This wine's pretty interesting. It's full flavoured. A lot of, I suppose, green apple, crispy fruit flavours, lime, pineapple, honeydew, melon is what's in this wine. It's a bit of a, I suppose, a blend. In style, it's if I could describe it, it'd be between a Riesling and a Sauvignon Blanc. So very full flavoured. The vintage that we're offering here is 2020. So the wine that you're going to be getting is very fresh, easy drinking style. It's a perfect patio style wine, this wine. It's a wine just to have while you're cooking, sitting out the back or wherever you are, but it's just an easy drinking style of wine, and it's a wine that's quite easy to drink the second and the third and even the fourth glass if you're particularly thirsty. Now, the style of this, it's got quite, as I said, melon finish, crisp acidity. It's got a long, persistent finish. If you had people coming around to your house and they had never drunk wine before, and you wanted to start them off with a wine and you weren't sure what to give them, this would be the perfect wine to give them. It's very full-flavored, fruity, passion fruit, lemon style wine, not bitter at all, just an easy drinking, full-flavored style. The previous vintages of this have won trophies. We've had, our first vintage was back in, I think, 2015, and we won a trophy. We won a trophy with a 16 vintage and a 17 vintage. And back in the day, we had the monopoly in Ontario experimented with this, and they bought about 500 cases of it. And it sold out in about 2 weeks, so it was very popular. At this stage, we're offering this wine again exclusively through Opimium.
We snagged it.
So it's just, I love this style, drink it at home a lot myself. And it's just a very interesting, full-flavored wine. And again, it comes under our Winemakers Reserve range. It's in a premium bottle in a clear, when I say clear, it's slightly Arctic blue, but it's a clear bottle and presents pretty well. But again, most importantly is what's inside the wine, inside the bottle that counts. So that's an interesting one. Now, what else should I be talking about, Mike? Obviously, the more premium wines are also pretty interesting. We've got one that you have chosen, which is one that we is a more of a boutique wine for us. Is this wine here called our limited release Gundagai Shiraz. Some of you will say they would have never heard of this place called Gundagai, And this is one of the few Gundagai Shiraz in Australia. There aren't too many. This particular wine is 2017 vintage. It's got a little bit of age on it. We developed this initially for the high-end demand that we had in some of our Asian markets, and they were asking for a more expensive, a more complex wine. Gundagai is a region we get these, and we have done for a number of years, been getting great parcels from this area called Gundagai, which is right at the top of the New South Wales border. It's almost between the border of Queensland and New South Wales. So it's a pretty interesting wine. It's again, a lot of blackberries, black currant, great length on the nose. We were so impressed with the parcels that we've been getting from Gundagai that we've decided to make a wine exclusively from this region. And again, this is exclusive to Opimium. So that's a more upmarket version we have. All of this one, particular one I've got in my hand here, is number 6,026 of 7,000 bottles. So we only make 7,000 bottles, however much that is, a bit under 600 cases, I think. 600 dozen.
Right, and yeah.
500 dozen, 600 dozen, roughly. Yep. So that it's a rather interesting wine, and
so many Shirazes, so little time.
Yes. Yes. So I suppose the final Shiraz in this range that we haven't talked about, which is the one that Michael's drinking right now, is just before I get on to the final Shiraz, which is the Bonsai, I should just mention that this wine's won 2 gold medals, international gold medals. So that's interesting as well, the Gundagai Shiraz. Now the final Shiraz is our premium wine in our range, which is the Bonsai. It's a blend of Shiraz and Cabernet. It's around about 65% Shiraz and 35% Cabernet. It all comes off the High Eden Vineyard, so it's a single vineyard wine. This vintage that we're offering in the cellar offering is 2018 vintage. It's been in mainly new, but a little bit of 2 and 3 year old French oak for over 20 months. And it's the premium wine in our range. We only make a hatful of this. Again, depending on the vintage, we make somewhere between, and I'm talking about dozens here rather than 6-packs. Mike, forgive me.
No, that's all right. Yeah,
400 and 600 cases a year.
Mm-hmm.
This wine is on the higher end of that. I think we made about 560 cases, something like that. So
I think we're privileged to have access to it, and I always like to think that I don't like a wine just because it's expensive. But I actually am like, this is just so incredibly good that that I'll be buying it again this year. Like, I've got 2 bottles of the 2015 left in the cellar, so it needs replenishing.
And sounds like one of those might be in your glass, part of your drinking.
You're absolutely right. Yes.
Well, it's very. I mean, it's quite a complex wine. It's not over the top. I should perhaps read out Jane's comments in regard to it. What has she said in regard to this particular wine? Sorry, I'm just.
Yeah, about being handpicked, and she says rich concentrated wine with dark ripe fruit aromas of blueberries and black currants. and pencil lead edge, which I've always had trouble finding, and with a bit of practice, I'm starting to find it now.
Yeah. So with this one, you're going to get dark cherry, dark chocolate. It's and also some plum flavors, but it's got really great length. The wine is quite fine to drink now. It goes perfectly with obviously all sorts of different meat dishes. But importantly, it will continue to improve in the cellar. And this wine is literally made to put, to get better over the next 10 to 15 years. It'll get better and improve, become more complex, probably at its peak in about 10 years' time. So we're pretty proud of this wine. We, again, with this particular vintage, the 2018, has won a couple of international gold medals. We don't show it in a lot of wine shows, but occasionally we do, like the London International Wine Fair and some of the bigger shows around the world, because it's just good to have independent experts reinforce what we think of this wine. So I hope you enjoy it. We only literally have a relatively small allocation. I think it's only it's a small allocation for OPM, but it's there if anybody would like to try it. And I think
wouldn't be surprised if we sell out of that before the end of the cellar offering, for sure. Really nice. And I have had, sorry, go ahead.
We obviously developed this premium wine just off it's a single vineyard wine coming from this 450 meter elevation at High Eden, which is a beautiful part of the world with a lovely dam, and we've got a great farmhouse there with 3 bedrooms and a couple of bathrooms. If anybody's coming to Australia, any of you are welcome to come and visit and stay there. We recently had Claire and Andrew, who I might be.
They are on the call, and they're actually saying they had the 2017 on Friday with a rack of lamb, and they would love to keep it for 15 years, but they can't bring themselves to do it. So,
well, it's an interesting wine, and one that you might find interesting in your cellar. Together with this range, Mike, I'm not sure how I'm going for time here, but we're
in good shape. We got a few minutes for sure.
This final wine is the Berton Vineyard High Eden Cabernet Sauvignon. So this is 100% Cabernet Sauvignon, 100% single vineyard. Again, these wines are individually bottled. This particular one, my goodness, we only made 300 cases of it. So it was coming off a drought year. And the reason we only made such a small amount, this particular vintage, is because we've had a bit of a drought in Australia. We've had all sorts of climactic issues, as you probably read, with the big bushfires we had earlier in the year, which luckily didn't affect any of our vineyards or anything really to do with our Burton Vineyard business, but it did affect many, many growers in Australia. And it was predicated by long dry seasons in Australia, and that meant that our dam at the Eden Valley Vineyard that keeps the vines going was pretty much empty. So it was very, very low yields, but still very good quality with this 2018 Cabernet Sauvignon from Eden Valley.
And we deliberately don't talk about specific prices because they are different across the country, but this one is particularly well priced, in my opinion. I think that it's quite the steal. Yeah.
So again, that's interesting. It's part of the. Is this one in the? This is part of the
It's web exclusive. Yeah.
Web exclusive. So it's a 2018 vintage. It's the style of the wine. It's quite robust. It's got some reasonably sort of firm edges, being a Cabernet, but again, it's got lots of great mint, blackberry, plum flavors. And I think it goes perfectly with lamb dishes, of course. We eat a lot of lamb in Australia, like you do, I imagine, in Canada as well. And this is the perfect wine for all sorts of different lamb dishes. I think that's pretty much most of the wines that we have.
So I've deliberately avoided this question. It was the first one asked by Dean and Carol. And
Yes.
just so you know, Andrew, before we answer this question cagily, is that we don't tell members what the Founder's Choice selection is. And you
Okay.
guys are doing the Founder's Choice this time, but they were asking if it had been in last year's offering, which of course it isn't, because we choose Founder's Choice specifically because it's never been offered to members. And in fact, we won't offer it to members for several years after this as well. So it makes it extremely exclusive, and that's one of the joys of the the Founder's Choice program. So don't answer that, Andrew. But Dean and Carol,
I don't think I have.
and the answer is, Dean and Carol, if we told you, we'd have to kill you. And I'm sure people are getting sick and tired of that joke of mine.
But it's wine that we've had in barrel for a couple of years, and it's a blend that Jane's chosen specifically, and it's being bottled exclusively for Opimium. So it's quite a special wine for sure. We're very proud of it. I'm sure that anyone that receives a case or a bottle of that will be pretty happy with it. But I'm not going to give away any more than that, Michael. Otherwise,
nicely done. I'm glad you could tell. Does anybody else have any other questions? I don't see any in the queue at the moment, but we're happy to answer any before we sign off. We've been 55 minutes, so we don't want to keep Andrew too much longer. And you've got to get on with your morning, right, Andrew? Now that you've had a few glasses of wine.
It's been fabulous having a glass of wine at 8:30 on a Monday morning.
That's right.
I could quite easily get used to that.
Quite so, huh?
Well,
that's great, Andrew. Well, and Anais, thank you so much for providing those links to the online onlys. That's really helpful. Everybody, I hope, saw those in the chat along the side. And thank you to the Opimium members who have joined us tonight. We sure appreciate your interest, and I hope that you're enjoying these virtuals. They certainly have become very popular, and we're delighted with that. And Andrew, thank you for taking the time to speak with us and to have come to Canada before, and I'm sure we'll see you in Canada again. And thanks for being part of that web exclusive piece that we're starting to do that. So that's great.
Well, Michael and Anais, thank you very much for inviting myself and Burton to talk about our wines, and I hope your members enjoy the wines. There's some absolutely fantastic selection in that catalogue that you've got.
All right. Thanks again, and I'm off to find some lamb for dinner.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.